this weekend in Europe, a little team called Method had to play versus Team Dignitas and Fnatic in the same weekend. And though they lost versus Team Dignitas, as so many teams do, they prevailed and got a win over Fnatic today. And now Team Octalysis attempts to do the same. They played versus Tempo Storm. They got reverse swept by Tempo Storm. They looked really good doing it. Let's see if they can get the win over HeroesHearth. You think they can do it?
I think they can. I mean, obviously we've seen their play. When they're at the top of their game, they're as good as anybody. They took this very same HeroesHearth team to a Game 5 in that playoff system and just missed out on qualifying for the midseason brawl. So a team like this does have it within them. It's just a matter of them finding that consistency. And I know that you've got a couple things you want to talk about consistency or maybe lack thereof in certain areas.
Yeah, I want to talk about flexibility, but I'm going to wait and do that in a second because after that win, Tempo Storm now sits atop the standings of North America, a position they're very comfortable in, though HeroesHearth Esports has a chance to again tie it back up to 3 wins a pop if they get a win over Octalysis. Meanwhile, Octalysis is sitting down at that 4-5 area. If they can get the win, that would allow them to keep up with teams like Endemic and Team Freedom. But of course, because everyone plays each other, yes, the standings are going to be even in terms of number of matches by the end of today, but it's not until, I feel like, week 4 especially, that we have a very good idea of where the skill level lies between the teams.
Yeah, everybody obviously has BlizzCon mindset. There's certain teams that are like, look, it's not about where we are now, it's about where we are when we get into playoffs or maybe one of those automatic qualifiers, obviously depending on how Western Clash goes. But I think the problem lies with these teams is that when you get to that week 4, week 5, Western Clash is very much in your mindset because you want to be that top 4 team. You want to be representing yourself very well at that juncture. So I think early on is important. Middle is important. Obviously, long term is where some teams are seeing themselves, but there's definitely a high priority in these first few weeks.
Well, there's a lot we want to talk about for this match, but first, let's hear from Ishbu and Draded as they weigh in on this series.
So Octalysis' roster has always been incredibly gifted mechanically. The problems Octalysis has always had is just making their 5 players work as a 5-man unit, as a team. They had some issues last time which caused a little bit of a division in their team, so if they can get those fixed and if they can make their team work more like a team, I expect them to be very scary and be a lot stronger than they were last time. That being said, time will tell us if they can exactly get to that point. But otherwise, I don't see how this team could be any weaker than last time, as the players are just as skillful as they were before.
You know, when you're going to play against HeroesHearth, you have to be ready to play every aspect of the game. They're going to punish you wherever you make mistakes, and that's the thing about playing against HeroesHearth. If you want to win against HeroesHearth, you really need to bring your A game that day. I think in the past year, Crowan has definitely improved himself as one of the top ranged in North America. I think Prismat and we have a little bit of work to do before we can reach the level of synergy between Arthalon and Crowan, but once we get there, then we're going to look just as scary as them.
I think will be scary for HeroesHearth is the amount of heroes, the flexibility that Octalysis is willing to bring into this game. Because I was studying for this match, and I looked at how many heroes have been played so far from all of the teams, and Octalysis has played one less series than a lot of the teams, all the teams except those who are playing today, and they have already played 30 heroes. Everyone else, somewhere between 18 up to 25. 25 would have been Tomorrow, who had already played their 3rd series. That is a lot more that they are willing to flex onto, and that is at every single person on this roster.
And to put that in context for people wondering about the hero pool, because we do go through meta shifts and changes, for an entire season last year, I think Phase 2, a team like Ballistics, who was the top 4 team in the world, played 38 total heroes over 10 weeks. And then most teams tend to fall in that 40 to 45 range, which again, with meta shifts and things like that, is normal. When you're already sitting at 30, that is a wide variety of heroes. And it's the thing that I said, coming into week 1, it's a matter of, it sometimes feels like they are talented enough to do everything, but they don't ever hone in on certain strategies that tend to be, hey, this works this time, let's run it again, let's run it again. Alternatively, when we heard from Ishbu the other day, it's like, well, we just ran the same comp 3 games in a row and said if they could beat us. The answer was no, they couldn't.
Right, and that's not the first time this phase they've done that. their first match, they ran Tassadar, Diablo, Thrall, and just ran a very standard, that was the kind of comp they were going to play. This last one, it was the Johanna Blaze with either Jaina or Phoenix behind it. These combos exist for Heroes Hearth. Heroes Hearth, we know how they're going to play, we know how they're going to look. I put this match and their ability to win purely on Octalysis, if they can draft, as long as they make sure that they're concocting well-drafted, well-rounded strategies while still making sure that they are figuring out how to counter those kinds of combos from Heroes Hearth. But enough from us, enough about the drafting. We're going to get into it soon, but it starts with the Battleground pool. Heroes Hearth has banned Sky Temple. They are willing to change up quite a bit, though, or no, they banned Infernal Shrines. My apologies. That is the normal ban for them, though they are willing to go into Sky Temple bans. And then Dragonshire from Octalysis, that's the same thing as they banned versus Tempo.
Well, Battlefield of Eternity coming in here. You know, I will say this, though. Arthalon, I think, was at or near the top of most heroes played individually last phase. Crowan, however, was on the opposite end of that spectrum, so they put a lot in Crowan's hands. And with Battlefield of Eternity here, we know Hanzo has extremely high priority. Despite the nerfs to that level 4 talent, that PvE damage, it still has such a major impact. And this Heroes Hearth team is a team that is willing to protect the Hanzo with double and sometimes, well, double warrior and sometimes double support as well behind that. So that is something that if you're Octalysis, you have to be able to deal with here if you let Hanzo through that first ban.
I think Octalysis was expecting the Shrines ban, given that it is, again, one of the main bans for Heroes Hearth. But did Heroes Hearth expect Battlefield of Eternity? Because not a whole lot of teams have been picking this map, J-How.
Well, you and I say, where is this map? We love this map. We know that there's fighting. That's a very exciting map. Well, we're going to get it right out of the gates. And with Genji being banned out, Hanzo potentially there, the other thing you have to be careful of is a Tracer. And it's something that we've seen a lot of from Heroes Hearth as of late. We even saw a team just recently try and draft specifically to counter that Tracer pick that we know Crowan has been running. We saw some changes earlier in the year. It was Arthalon on the Tracer. At Midseason Brawl, it was McIntyre on the Tracer. But going back, kicking it old school is Crowan, and he's showing that he never really skipped a beat on this hero. This is some minor changes, but the hero is still very impactful.
There would be a lot available, though, if Octalysis did have to deal with that Tracer, and it wouldn't be a Tracer likely right here. It would be something more like Malfurion. I like the Hanzo. Hanzo is such a good first pick on Battlefield of Eternity. Now, does Octalysis want to play something like a Task Tracer?
That's the problem, is that the one thing that Heroes Hearth does with that composition, Tracer is one of the best at getting to that backline, providing that additional harassment. But Heroes Hearth has been known to run the Uther as the second support. Does really well dealing with the Pulse Bomb, can lock Tracer down if she comes in too far. We don't see it just yet, as we get the Yrel and the Li Ming, which does have significant poke on this, some of the best poke on this battleground, but pretty easily matched by Hanzo.
Way faster for Hanzo, too, when he wants to burn down, which means that the poke is good if you're going for the long, drawn-out, the fights, but a lot of that is positional dependent. So we'll see what Octalysis can do more with this. We know that Prismaticism, he can change things up. He can do more damage with his Li Ming because he's more willing to go into things like the Charged Blast instead of Dominance. We saw that last time versus Tempo Storm when he played Li Ming. So we may see that here. I expect someone who can give more to the burn of an Immortal for the second backliner, for probably traded there, maybe something like a Greymane if they can play their cards right in the draft.
I remember it wasn't until the Koreans really started playing Calamity that Seeker was the hotness back in the day. We haven't seen that in a very long time. Johanna gives you that frontline protection. When you talk about the positional advantages, Johanna can do very well to hold a position or even casually move into position without the threat of being taken down. Malfurion, we know, very strong, and depending on what we see come out from the side of Octalysis on whether we end up getting that double support to give that Hanzo. This is one of the rare maps and one of the rare heroes that you can just use them as your main damage dealer and only damage dealer.
Octalysis probably going to ban a solo hero here. They've already banned Blaze and taken Yrel. We didn't go into it yet, but I love that they have taken that Blaze away, because Blaze has been so crucial and so focused on for Heroes Hearth. Heroes Hearth still get this Hanzo, Malfurion, and the Johanna, but it's not Johanna and Blaze together. And that is now something that we're going to test and see. What does Heroes Hearth look on the other side of that? And this is very well done by Octalysis. They have done their homework.
Yeah, the studying is done. It's time to execute. So taking away that potential double, what we have seen Brightwing is that secondary. That is if you still decide to go into that Tracer. The other thing is they did not prioritize the potential Dahaka there. I think if you go Dahaka, then you give them the Sonya or the Leo. Sonya obviously much higher priority on this battleground, and it still gives you control because Johanna on the front line alone is good. Johanna on the front line with the Blaze that you mentioned is also really strong, but when you start to peel back those layers and those options, it becomes a little bit more difficult to defend with. And with Blaze being out and Uther normally that second support, Octalysis has a clear strategy in mind.
We've seen Draded play things like a Thrall, like a Zeratul. I almost wonder too if this is going to be another situation where he's more on the front line than on the back. When he played, actually that was a different team, but still that Uther can be very problematic for someone who is squishier on the front line in that pseudo third melee role. But HeroesHearth, they're going to punish that idea too by taking away the Kharazim. Given that Uther was still banned, this now limits the burst healing without Divine Palm and without Divine Shield.
Rhaegar, you know, has been making his way back in, and obviously Lightning Bond has been gone for a while, but the early sustain, I think, is much more noticeable for that hero. Does give you a little bit of race potential, can of course also give you that lightning shield as well to do some additional damage. Something to consider here, although Deckard is still available.
Yeah, that Kharazim is a very nice ban because of the not only the palm but also the damage that he can do to people chasing them down, but to the Immortal. In the race there, Muradin and Deckard Cain are the two choices for Octalysis, so we leave that Draded hero until the end.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I'm sitting here thinking it, because that gives you the ultimate flexibility to say, well, if you're not going to go double support, maybe we do bust out that X Factor, and Zeratul definitely comes to mind when you go that even throw if you want to be hyper aggressive into this. Again, by taking away the Blaze, you take away some of those safety options and you lose that frontline control. There's not a lot of other warriors that kind of have that impact. We saw earlier in EU the Arthas, obviously that got punished a bit, but that was also to deal with the potential Greymane and things of that nature coming in. There are other options, they're just not very prevalent right now in our current meta, so Sonya seems likely, but Dahaka obviously another high priority for HeroesHearth.
When he hasn't played Blaze, his second most played hero has been Thrall, him being McIntyre. I almost wonder if we see him build more into taking that. Yeah, and they still get Tracer too. This is really cool. Team Octalysis thinks they're going one way, HeroesHearth swings way the other way, picking up Tracer because they had Malfurion before, and they do get McIntyre's Thrall.
Well, now that leaves this in question here on the backside. Do you just go Greymane? That's something that can deal with the Tracer and a Thrall a little bit easier than some of the other heroes, because if you have vulnerable targets back there, Deckard does give you the sustain healing. Obviously, Li Ming now probably be forced to go into that Force Armor level 1 to make sure you have that spell armor available to you. But here, you've kind of positioned yourself in the corner.
Oh, wow.
Well, when in doubt, I guess you can go Sergeant Hammer, who does have spell armor and potential more armor as well, and you just dare them to siege into you. I think the problem with this is that when I look at this draft, Hanzo's still on the other side, and I think Hanzo's still winning this poke battle.
Yes. Hammer and Li Ming can do a good amount of poke, but Hanzo is just so fast with his Scatter Arrow build if he's untouched. And that's without Thrall and Tracer. And Thrall can do a lot too. I'm pretty scared for that Sergeant Hammer and her ability to stay safe. She does have Deckard Cain. She has Muradin and Uriel too, who are going to be there trying to peel away. But the cool thing about Battlefield of Eternity, and one reason why we have seen Sergeant Hammer here before in Korea, is because the center location. So I think positionally, where those Immortals spawn, that's going to be everything for these fights.
Time to go graduating range, right?
Hey, no. No, not at all.
Well, I mean, I think the one thing that always is tricky about Hanzo compositions is you do have the poke, but making room for that poke has also oftentimes been difficult. But Thrall and Tracer give you that added pressure without the risk involved. There is some risk involved going into a hammer, but I think this is a little bit better scenario. Very much a lot of firepower on the side of HeroesHearth.
Yeah, trying to find someone who gives you something for the Immortal race, but also some disengage. You know, Falstad's going to be really scary for the Tracer, or against the Tracer, which is what I thought. We'll see how this hammer works out. In the blue, it is Team Octalysis, with Justin playing Muradin, Prismaticism on Sergeant Hammer, Goku on Urel, Draded playing Li Ming, and Deckard Kane played by Buds.
Heroes Hearth on the other side, Gillian. You know they've got a lot of fanfare right now based on that cheer bar that we continually throw up there. PBJ is going to be on the Malfurion. Ishbu, of course, on that Johanna. Very familiar with that hero as of late. McIntyre going to be on the Thrall. Arthalon, again, back to that Tracer, but that's only because we've got a certain player named Crowan on that Hanzo.
We've been talking a lot about Western Clash, which is, of course, what the teams are playing for in the immediate future. And if you want to come to the Western Clash, we would love to have you there. It's going to be at the Blizzard Arena. You can get the tickets on playheroes.com/esports/tickets. They're still available.
Not going to lie, Gilly, I get mine for free. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty nice. Same.
You know, one thing that we've seen spring up at times, but never really too often here in North America, and if it's happened, I can't even think about it right now. Sledgehammer at 4 for Muradin. It's not that often. Here's going to be Prismat just sieging up, getting some early structure damage in. But we are going into a perfect storm, so it does give an opportunity to stack that up as this game goes on.
We're seeing a 2-3 from HeroesHearth Esports. Johanna, Crowan, and BBJ are here just trying to keep this Sergeant Hammer at bay, while Urel is having to deal with a Tracer and a Thrall. That's about to change, though. Tracer's starting to rotate her way down.
Well, again, Urel's wave clear is severely lacking.
Yes.
And they just walked right in, took a tower. They almost traded out a tower and might eventually do so, but definitely bringing that down here, alleviating some of that pressure for Thrall in that top lane. As Heroes Hearth now has 4 members here in the bot lane.
It gives a little bit of more of an experience, opens up the battleground just slightly more, but maybe also feeling like you could deal with the Sergeant Hammer a little bit more than thought otherwise because of the blinds of Johanna in the lockdown. But Prismaticism, clear as day, the one time that we saw Ishbu start to posture to come in and set up for that from Prismat. He just used his armor and then scooted out to reposition.
Well, the damage is exchanged. We saw the attempt on the bottom camp. One of those 3 was cleared, so it doesn't take terribly long if we do see this reapproached. And again, level 4 Hanzo with the scatter arrow build can rip through that a little bit quicker. So we'll see if one of these teams is willing to commit to it. But Justin now permanently positioning himself to keep an eye on this while the rest of his team has gone over. I think Heroes Hearth, with that arrow going out, might try and identify this, but it does look like Octalysis has picked up the camp, and Heroes Hearth, they're going to double back and pick this up.
Jayho, now that Arthalon has come down to the bot, Octalysis is winning that top lane pretty well with Urel. Urel versus Thrall, she's not doing anything like structural damage from here, but because she has the charging and there's only the one root of the spirit to try to stop that, you have to be trying to hit those, and otherwise she's going to be able to take control of this lane pretty well, which is what we're seeing from Goku, which lets him rotate down to the Immortal faster. Now we see, is the Li Ming and the Sergeant Hammer, who is going to stay in lane for the moment enough, and it looks like, yes, it is, with Draded throwing out those skill shots.
A lot of aggression coming in, and as Ishbu's coming in, there's going to be the root down. Goku's going to eat the pulse bomb, going to be just fine. Also, Gilly, another game where we're seeing Hand of Protection to deal with the potential roots coming in from Thrall and Malfurion to deal with some of that CC. That's one of the things that it can do. No 7 for Hanzo, which means the race is strong, but it's nowhere near as strong as it will potentially be here in a few levels.
Right, there is, again, no cleanse for Deckard Kane here, not even a Nature's Cure, and as you said, Sledgehammer was the pickup for Justin.
Wow, okay.
He moves in and uses that to cause the halftime show. Now we see the swap and the defensive positioning, or well, offensive, considering how you want to call it that, but either way, it's easier to attack your opponent's Immortal in this second half.
How cool is it to be Sergeant Hammer right there? Just look, I have an entire wall between us, and this is just allowing him to just sit there and poke the Immortal because that early race going over to Octalysis, but Sergeant Hammer and the Sledgehammer Muradin. I'm digging it.
And Octalysis just had faster rotations onto the Immortal initially, which then forced Heroes Hearth, though they did peel away Hanzo to take down a lot of that shielding to try to defend, and they'll have to continue to do so. Knockback there. Ishbu's already used his Iron Skin. Prismaticism behind this now has the Hover Siege, can follow along right behind the Immortal, who will tank a lot of these shots away from whatever HeroesHearth wants to throw at it. He can move into position, maybe start looking at trying to take down the fort, but the well, that's a given. That's a for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just sieging up here, it's so strong. Justine being aggressive. There's the scroll going down as well. They like to get this fort. This fort is worth a lot of experience. They have some minions here, seeing if they're willing to commit to it. Hammer does get the last shot, uses that unstoppable and walks away. That is a major chunk of experience to stretch this lead a little bit further, and you can see both teams have their eye on this Impaler camp.
Deckard with an Immortal is pretty scary to try to defend into for any team, even someone. That's a great Stormbolt for someone as tanky as a Johanna. The Solos have swapped down to the bottom lane now. And Octalysis, though they did get the fort, they don't have they're not too far ahead in experience. There's still some time for HeroesHearth to figure something out, but if they don't, then it's like that they could be facing the same kind of situation as before, where Octalysis, having an advantage, can get onto the Immortals just slightly faster and do the same thing.
That was such a good route there. Pulse Bomb ended up missing, but that was such a good route because Goku was coming in, trying to leap in. Kron sidestepping a lot, using that agility. Goku trying to find a target. Arthalon taking some damage. There's the autos, but going to go ahead and blink away in time. But you can see this action, Battlefield of Eternity, has an entirely different feel. Sergeant Hammer.
Yeah, McIntyre rotated up, had the root, the sprays are flying, and that is the kill that HeroesHearth needed to catch up in this game. Now no Sergeant Hammer for 13 seconds, so she'll be back for the Immortal phase. But HeroesHearth feeling good as they try to get a mercenary camp to slow down Octalysis and turn the tides of the next Immortal fight into their favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a race to 10. It's top-bottom again, so we might see a little bit of a soft defense, but maybe some poke as well. And then, of course, after the halftime show and people pushing towards 10 is going to be where things can really explode here. It just kind of depends on the early positioning. And for HeroesHearth and Hanzo ripping through this Immortal.
So fast. It is so fast. Octalysis get back here quickly, though, and stop it from a free halftime show.
There's going to be a route going on to Justine. Experience slightly in favor. As Justine goes in, the hammer lands. Crowan does get some healing. Justine eats a pulse bomb, gets the 25 armor from that dwarf toss, making sure to keep him alive. Second wind will be kicking in here momentarily, so healing him back up. But Sledgehammer's going to get a little bit of damage in, but 10 is the race right now. As we can see the mini-map, teams are branching off, trying to get this while the halftime show is about to kick in.
This is where Octalysis needs to try to get Sergeant Hammer into position if they can, and you can see the setup. It's these rocks and your ability to sit around them and keep your opponents from coming in. Because you have the scroll of sealing, all of that in the bottom, you see Justine hanging around there, forces the funneling in from the top instead.
Napalm, by the way. That's one way to poke this bad boy down.
Arthalon's gonna move in through the top. Drops a pulse bomb in that does do some damage, but the fight's happening in the bottom too as Draded goes down. HeroesHearth just forcing their way into this fight and taking out Draded.
Scatter Arrow just came in there and ripped them apart. Crowan making his impact felt very well here on this Hanzo. They're continuing to go in. There's going to be the root. The Dwarf Toss not able to get there. Avatar is going to be used, but Arthalon comes in, confirms the kill. Justine falls. The Immortal is getting absolutely destroyed here. Prismat trying to defend. But this is a 10,000 shield Immortal now coming in here for HeroesHearth. The tide is turning very rapidly.
I feel like this is going to be a consistent theme for HeroesHearth. They lose the first objective, and then they always win the second one. They never have lost it. It happened on Volskaya. It's happening now here on Battlefield of Eternity. And it's their ability to make the right calls early and understand that they can get right back in the action while those respawn timers are low. That now is enabling them to put the siege toward Team Octalysis. Octalysis have Sergeant Hammer. She's going to try to siege that down quickly unless HeroesHearth can get in here and force back Sergeant Hammer out of range of this, which is what McIntyre's looking to do.
Ooh, you know, he was trying to get more with that. Does get the root, but it was onto Emerden, unable to get that secondary target behind there. The Immortal, though, still somewhat healthy health-wise. Dragon Arrow for the initiation, seeing if they can go in. Justine drops into position, trying to protect there. Goku comes in as well. Arthalon eats a bit of damage, forced to retreat. And now this Immortal will take down one keep tower on this wall, but otherwise it's going to be thwarted. Actually did not end up confirming that takedown on that tower.
Half a level lead now for HeroesHearth with them taking down that fort. This is an extremely close game, but one where HeroesHearth still is seemingly in control. The feel of it, the momentum, that they didn't really lose out on too much except for the fort with that first phase, and now immediately head back and get some mercenary camp pressure, possibly to try to siege down against that other fort.
Yeah, they've done some damage to that fort wall earlier in the game, and I think if they use that double camp, double pressure between the Thrall and the Tracer, as old Tracer has Hearth back, they don't have the control of the Shaman camp during the objective phase, but it's been pretty easy to clean up until this point, and it's actually going to force a response here by Octalysis to defend against that, to make sure and protect that fort in that race to 13.
Right, because a lot of times when you see teams be willing to take that early of a Shaman camp, it's because you want to do something with that instead, and now we're seeing that rotation up. Waiting to see what Octalysis wants to do around this. HeroesHearth very close to 13, but there is a moment here for Octalysis to get something done.
McIntyre forced to use that Earthquake. Arthlon goes in, gets the bomb in. That's actually enough to take down Draded, who got a little bit of healing, but might not have had that spell armor proc. So heroics used, kills have been taken. Now they're continuing to siege up. The Shaman camp, I believe, is down. Only left is the Impaler camp. But Ishbone team now with a fresh wave of minions. They're going to push in here aggressively. Prismat team, they got to be careful. There's no saving this fort.
Yeah, with Earthquake down, Dragon's Arrow, and especially the Blessed Shield, less scary, but still possible to get kills, especially when you don't have Ardent Defender. But Goku barely survives. Fort gone. HeroesHearth makes that swift transition in perfect timing to start working on this Immortal, and we're right back to scatter arrows and a Thrall on the Immortal. Even a Treant will join the fight.
Yeah, I mean, having the Sergeant Hammer and the Leeming is nice, but I think they're just going to have to concede this race, maybe turn to get that Shaman camp. Actually, they don't have enough firepower yet. They really want 13. Yrel and Leeming on the top and bottom. I think they're going to have to take this fight. I don't think they can afford to give up this much. The Hanzo poke is just way too significant. 13's here. Octalysis is looking to engage. They got to take this fight. It's got to happen.
Nice route through where it's what the obvious path will be, trying to channel in. All right, Prismat gets set up around the side. Goku dives in, looking for a victim.
They still can get a little bit of poke in. There's Li Ming with the flank, but again, every time Krohn finds an angle, he will land it. And Arthlon in and out, trying to get the poke here in the top lane. Only 4,700 health remains on that. And make that 3,800. Those scatter arrow angles by Krohn. Geometry is his specialty.
We're seeing Octalysis do a much better job between the two frontliners of making sure someone is staying back to protect Prismaticism and Draded. Last time, Draded died very quickly when HeroesHearth wanted to engage. This time, if Goku jumps in, Justing's back. He's watching out. Same thing, if Justing is out in front looking for it, Goku is there to keep his teammates safe, but they're not doing enough. HeroesHearth had this lovely dance back and forth between the Tracer, between the Hanzo, and their poke, because of how much damage they did earlier on, all they had to do was stay calm and get the poke in a way so that they can get a far healthier, far more shielded Immortal this time around.
Every time one went one and somebody committed some firepower to one, the other one would step forward, and that was nice to watch there from HeroesHearth. And now they'll have an opportunity to take down and keep here 13 minutes into the game. The Immortal extremely healthy. Li Ming and Hammer do have some decent poke here to try and deal with this. Justin as well, putting out that hammer.
And I think part of why HeroesHearth was so able to do that is when you look at the front line, yes, you have a Goku, but you're just limited to the hammer. You're limited to the Storm Bolt of Justing too. He's going to get knocked back and take some damage. And then a root from Goku, but Buds is wanting to stay back because he's Deckard Cain, and last time if HeroesHearth engaged, they're going to get that kill. They have proven that. So it's very difficult for them to be able to get a kill whenever someone steps forward off of Justing.
Arthlon coming in for the flank. That's going to be enough. Prismat's going to fall. Beautifully executed there by HeroesHearth. The composition, the combination of that beautiful flank there by Arthlon. This is going to help confirm a keep, and now we're going to see even more. The blink out by Draded is going to save him for now. Stay a while and listen. Locking down multiple members, but HeroesHearth, they are still being aggressive. They got one more pick here. This might be game over, but the Immortal starting to fade. They're going to have to back out. HeroesHearth, however, Gilly, 2-level lead and complete control right now in this game.
The game is theirs, or so it seems, and Octalysis is left with really hard choices. A lot of times when you see Immortals start to threaten keep structures that way, you see teams go around to flank for the fight instead, but how are you going to do that with what you have as a team? It's really hard with that Sergeant Hammer to make that a thing.
Yeah, that was so fun to watch because the Blessed Shield that set that up, but the positioning from Arthlon to come around that is something that is definitely one thing that can work in that. The minute you get those minions, that setup is pretty amazing.
HeroesHearth have been doing that the whole game. Just as soon as the frontliners are too far up, just a little bit, he finds the opportunity. But what sets that up is the constant poke of that Thrall and that Hanzo. And as Sergeant Hammer fell more and more, finally Arthlon had that spot where he could jump in and set that up, and then the chaos that ensued from that with the Dragon's Arrow too was really nicely done from HeroesHearth. Octalysis is alive in this game, but only just.
Well, the same way that you said, hey, if you're going to get that Shaman camp, you better do something with it. And right now, they've got the numbers advantage. They have somebody dealing with the double camp in the top, and that just allows them to soften up this bot lane. And the whole thing about this bot lane, you're going to get a decent amount of XP off of this bot lane, but it just makes more. You win the next Immortal, that Immortal goes straight to keep and potentially more. They continue to scale, continue to be stronger. The health on these structures, however, do not. And I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. And that right there might have potentially set up a win condition, but the fight, obviously, 16 needs to be picked up here. Bless Shield's going to be out. Earthquake as well.
Yeah, Justing the target. Justing goes down and dies. The control over that, not letting him Dwarf Toss away, even though he made it into Avatar, had the health there. It just wasn't enough. Goku was up dealing with the camps. It takes him a while to do that. The camps will be dealt with, but no Muradin. And how fast HeroesHearth chews through Immortal health bars. They have already gone to halfway. They're still 20 seconds out from Muradin. No 16 for Team Octalysis, and this feels like the nail in the coffin.
It's grim right now, and they're continuing to be aggressive. In comes the Condemn. They are on a defensive position, is Octalysis. See if they can hold a little bit. But the damage output here from HeroesHearth with this, they are ripping through this Immortal, and there is no defense available. Coming in, big roots. Goku and team unable to hold on the front line. Buds eats a pulse bomb, but only 3,500 health remains. Muradin will be in this fight, but it might be too much. Is this Immortal falling rapidly?
Octalysis knew they have to fight, but it's getting a kill that is the issue now.
I don't think they have a choice but to fight. Like,
yeah,
behind
they
the Immortal,
have to keep fighting.
There's no way. There's no way you can allow a full shield Immortal. I don't think you survive this. This should be the victory push here for HeroesHearth, but it is going to be a miracle defense for Octalysis.
Well, the one gleaming silver lining for Octalysis is that they do now have 16 for this fight. And Avatar will be back. Ardent Defender was used. Fight behind the Immortal, though, is pretty darn hard against an Earthquake, which is about to be back in 5 seconds. You can see Goku from the side. With Sergeant Hammer in the back, Dragon's Arrow, everything. Pulse Bomb, Muradin, that was a hands-off keyboard moment. He's gone in the blink of an eye.
Couldn't even press Avatar in that situation. Couldn't get out of there. Earthquake down, more pressure coming on. Deckard falls, 2 members down on the side of Octalysis. Might end up being more at the end of this, but this looks like all she wrote here as HeroesHearth comes in with a dominant performance behind, guess who? Hanzo.
9-0 in kills as they step on the core of Octalysis and grind it into the ground.
That was impressive.
Very, very well done. And again, I want to go back to highlight this point. They lost the first Immortal, but they macro so well around that. They went and got that one pivotal kill that caught them up in experience, so that even though they lost the fort and they lost that Immortal, they could contest and get back in and then use that composition the way it was designed, which is just wreck an Immortal. Very well done from HeroesHearth.
I just love everything about the way that they executed. Obviously, the damage came out in return from Prismat. Draded had a tough time in that. He was constantly under siege, trying to find targets on the front line. When you've got Tracer flanking, you've got Thrall flanking, your primary targets on the front, well, you've got a Johanna coming at you that can throw a big shield. You're not controlling that in any form or fashion. And Justin, man, normally a Muradin, super tanky, super reliable, but when they went all in on that, there was no surviving that, and the roots, picture perfect coming in from BBJ to follow up everything that started there.
I mean, the reason why Sergeant Hammer comps fell out of play on Battlefield of Eternity is because of the slow play, and teams found a way to get around that. And this is case example of a kind of fast play that you could have there. There's no... if you lose one person, if you make one mistake, then the Immortal is gone from you. It's not the slow siege down where you can get back into the fight. And when we saw the example of slow play that they were trying to bring out, Goku and Muradin, because Draded had gone down earlier, were in this weird spot where they would try to set up kills, like with a Stormbolt or a Righteous Hammer, but then you have Li Ming can't get into position to jump on top of them. You have Deckard Cain, who is the slow setup of the CC behind them, though it's a large area. They just could not ever get resets from the Li Ming, and the Sergeant Hammer playing that out slower. That's just not what Heroes Hearth wanted to do with the Tracer and the Hanzo.
And speaking of the Tracer, we actually have a replay of that dive because I think this is just so perfect for how you want to let's just pause right here because I think a lot of what we're going to watch, it's the pulse bomb is ready and it's choosing your target, right? So we'll roll forward here because the minute this immortal starts to come through, it's going to be initiated by that, but the key focus is going to be Arthon. He's looking for any moment. He's waiting for somebody to call that target. We're going to see Ishbu come down here in a moment. Prismat, obviously he has to have that spell armor, but check this, pause right there. Bless Shield goes out, it creates the big triangle there. Arthalon, well, don't lose track of him because he's coming in on the flank side, sees that that armor is already popped, and now it's all she wrote is Arthon's going to go ahead, we'll roll it forward, going to blink in on this backside. The minute he sees that armor goes down, it's going to be blink, 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 let's go. And he comes in on the backside. There is no protecting this. There it comes. There's the pulse bomb. There's the melee. And that is a dead hammer, and that's one of those things that you lose all defense, but the initiation, the combo, he's just looking for that primary target, and that was it. I mean, just that is the epitome of how this team functions, is the small combos, the big combos. It doesn't matter. The communication for this team is just so perfect there in those moments that it allows Ishbu to come in, make the play. We saw the Earthquake go down as well, but the armor popped. Once that's gone, free kill.
Yeah, I really liked the Earthquake too because it stopped both Muradin and Goku. They were trying to figure out what can we do, what can we set up here, and all that time it was just a ruse so that Arthalon could get around the back and get that Prismat kill. Game 1 goes to Heroes Hearth Esports. For Game 2,